And there it is. Okay, so you got me. Got Miss Coleman back there. We have a classroom of people. Okay. We're about to get this thing started.
We'll go look at the clicking hotspot.
Alright, so I'm giving a speech for public speaking, and I'm going to talk to you about why Linux is better than Windows. So, it was reported by Stephen J. Vaughn, who is a computer scientist, that the top 500 supercomputers in the world are 88% Linux-based. 10 years ago, that was completely Unix, but now it's mostly all Linux because it is the operating system of efficiency. It's an operating system like Windows, but it's geared to open source. It's meant to be a project for a community to work on rather than something to make money off of. I know a little bit about this because I'm an IST, as are all of you, and so we know a little bit about why Linux is better, but the average person doesn't. To the average person, they think that Windows is the only thing, and even in the IT world, it's mostly, everything's mostly run on Windows, your clients and your servers. But Linux is on the rise. So there are many advantages to Linux. The main points I'm going to hit are, what makes it efficient, what makes it economical, and what makes it the better, more stable long-term solution. But before I get to that, it's important to define what an operating system is to anyone who doesn't know. It's basically a program that communicates with the hardware to allow other programs to run. So every program doesn't have to be written to specifically talk to the hardware, it can just talk to the operating system. Webepedia pretty much defines it as just a platform for other programs. Fundamentally, it shouldn't be too hard to use because its purpose is to allow a user to manage their hardware without having to know a whole bunch of machine code or even a program. The OS revolves around this idea of the kernel, which is basically what specifically talks to the hardware and can talk across to many different types of hardware. Even though it may be a processor, there's many different types, and so the kernel is responsible for talking to all these different types. So why is it that Linux is so much more efficient than Windows? Well, according to Zal Gibbon, who is a software engineer, it's because basically the kernel is actually bigger, which is kind of counterintuitive. You would think that would be less efficient, but because it's bigger, it can hold all of its core functions in the same space, meaning they can all run next to each other basically, and they don't have to go through what's called an IPC, an inter-process communication, which is what Windows uses. Its kernel is very small, and all the different functions that it does have to go through kind of in between, which really slows down its response time. So there's another efficiency bonus, and it's more noticeable, is the process of fragmentation. With Windows, everything gets fragmented over time because it basically writes everything down ad hoc as it goes. It just sort of fills it in as it goes. But with Linux, it specifically allots the addresses that any file or program is going to take up, so it never fragments anything, meaning it's going to be quicker to pick up these files. So obviously it's more efficient, which is great for like a software developer or a supercomputer. But for the average person, efficiency, that level of efficiency isn't that important. But it is still a good choice because of the financial sensibility. It's free, it's open source, so you don't have to pay for it, and there are 100 different versions you can get for free, which for a business is, ideal. in addition to that, there's actually something which isn't often taken into account, which is the total cost of ownership. And that's the idea that, yeah, you pay for the operating system, but how much do you pay to maintain it, even to just install it? It takes a man hour to, go and install it, and you have to pay someone for that. Linux is quicker to install. So over the course of 4 years, after reinstalling hundreds of operating systems, you're talking about saving some serious dollars just in save time on that. In addition, you're going to have, because it is open source, there's a whole community working on it to improve it and make it more stable. And that really cuts down on your troubleshooting costs because you have a community to turn to rather than going to a specialist or something like that. So that kind of ties into how it's long-term stability. Because it's published under this general public license, it means that it's free to use for all. So anybody can go in and change anything, which means that there's constantly updates coming out every week. There's an update to the core kernel and to any distributions that are released of it. This is completely different from Windows because Windows, only a handful of programmers know what the code is or know even portions of the code and can work on it. And so there isn't nearly enough development from that little inner circle of people. And there's also, as I mentioned, the whole troubleshooting aspect that if you have this, you don't have to talk to an answering machine on Windows, their corporate infrastructure. You can just go to the internet and turn to a community. So in conclusion, Linux is just way more awesome than Windows, and it's better for businesses and the individual because of the savings and cost and everything else. It's just better for running anything. If you're trying to be a software developer or if you're trying to just browse the internet. So next time you get an operating system, hopefully you'll get Linux. Thank you.